It's a world that worships fear by, by professing how much it hates the thing it says it fears. Resistance creates identification. Fear is not an individual lie, it is a lying nature. So that our God, and people, maybe not a good place to end on this, but people, what do you mean? I say, you worship the God of fear. I do not. Well, what do you turn to when something happens that you don't like? You turn to something that has told you what's happened, then you listen to it tell you how to escape it, and then you give your choices over to that nature and then get there again and again and again. Who's your God? When you have the real God in your life, events don't repeat themselves. How's that?
Welcome, everyone, to the Spiritual Forum. I'm so glad you're here. It is a beautiful day in Wisconsin, and I wish I could share it with you. We're having a delightful summer, and I just love life today. And I'm sure my guest today will share how much he loves life, too. Want to remind you that my retreat is 1 month away. You can still attend if you want to register at thespiritualforum.org/retreat. It is called A World That Works for All, Whole Planet Spirituality. And you can attend virtually or in person at Unity Village. We've got a great run-up of speakers and spiritual practices and connection and collaboration time as we join our hearts and co-create a world that works for all, which starts with raising our consciousness. I also want to give a shout out to Marianne. Thank you very much, Marianne, for donating to this podcast. I really appreciate it. It helps to offset some of the costs of putting this voice of hope, inspiration, and awakening in the world. Now, I have a repeat guest. Many of you know Guy Finley, and he was on episode 209, which was called Live Fearlessly, and episode 241, where we talked about the courage to be free. Today, we've got a new topic, but it all ends up centering around the same stuff, I think, right? It sure does. Just as a reminder, Guy Finley was born into a successful show business family. He had a very successful early career, which he hung up at the age of 27. I mean, who does that other than Guy Finley?
Yeah.
Most of us hang on a lot longer than that. Anyway, his career was in music, and he was an award-winning composer. He is the founder and director of Life of Learning Foundation and the author of over 45 books. Welcome, Guy. Today, we're going to be talking about the secret of your immortal self, key lessons for realizing the divinity within.
Thank you, Carol. Nice to see you. Always appreciate our time together, and we do have a good time. So I put myself in your hands, and let's go.
Yeah, we do have a good time. I have to ask you a question because your intro says you're an author of over 45 books. So what does that mean? Does that mean like 46? Does that mean like 52?
Well, the truth is, if you were to add up the audio albums and the books and the booklets, it would probably be closer to 60. And,
Okay.
And if you were to add the individual recorded and released talks, it'd be nearer to 4,000.
Okay. That's what I thought. I thought it was kind of a bigger than 46. So.
It is, but I bore myself. It just, okay, so what? Either what we say is real and it resonates, and if it's not, then all the king's horses and all the king's men aren't going to elevate this to anything more meaningful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that about you. The other thing I really love about you is how accessible you are and how you don't put your work out there with thousands of dollars of price tags, and you just make it accessible to people.
No, when many years ago, I established the foundation as a nonprofit organization, I didn't really know exactly what that meant.
I get that. I'm
Yeah,
the same way.
yeah. But it's true. I take no remuneration for the books, for the programs, nothing. My wife and I live a fairly modest lifestyle. By the grace of God, we are able to eat good, organic, healthy food. I don't care what I wear, but she can get herself clothes that she likes, and it's great. I live on a mountain with my friends, all my deer and turkeys and the creatures that I spend time with every day, and I get to live a contemplative life, uh,
Yeah,
which is probably the greatest gift a human being can have. My mind isn't fettered with fear,
yeah.
and for that I'm grateful beyond measure. So that's me. Love me or leave me, and I don't care.
Right. Hang on to this whole hour podcast or drop off now. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But we do have a lot of wise things to share today. I do know that. I listened to our last two podcasts, and you're going to want to hear it a couple, 2 or 3 times at least to let it all kind of soak in because Guy packs a lot in what he has to share. And almost every sentence is something that you want to kind of listen to again and again to let it soak in. And so that's kind of how I recommend that you listen to this podcast. I really enjoyed listening to the last two that we did together to prepare for today.
And I like the idea of soaking in. Really, what it means, I think, is that the more I listen, the more I remember that I already knew that.
Mm-hmm.
So that it isn't so much as it's soaking in as I'm being reabsorbed into another order of intelligence that was resident within me this whole time. I just wasn't in touch with it. That's all true teachings do. Is help a person remember what they have forgotten, pick up what they had inordinately put down. And that's all the job is really, and that's all. People say, "Well, how do you know what you know?" I say, "Well, I don't know. Um, I love what is true. I'm willing to go through what is true asks me to do, and I always find the reward is greater than the cost. So, that's really the whole road in one respect, isn't it? I'm going to be quiet now, and let's go on to what you want to talk about.
Well, before I go on to what I want to talk about, I do have a question for you because do
Yeah.
you ever listen back to yourself and go, "Oh, I didn't realize I said that. That's interesting that I said that. I didn't like 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 the divine is speaking through you, and when you listen back, you remember what you talked about." Does that happen for you?
Well, the truth is, I never listen back.
Okay, okay.
I really don't. But from time to time, uh, I have probably 2 or 3 books in various stages of work right now, and I'll look at some of the special writings. I speak 3 times a week. I always prepare special key lessons and special writings. Probably 5 million words of unpublished works, Carol. And I read sometimes some of these things, and I am as excited to read them as would anybody be excited to read them, because it's objective. I mean, yes. Now the problem is, you can't paste those papers on your face, right? You can't rub those tapes on your chest. We want to live the word, not just be able to speak it.
Right. Yes. And this book is called The Secret of Your Immortal Self. Why don't we talk about that?
Sure.
The immortal self. Let's just let you talk about what that is and what the secret is.
Well, first, I suppose the secret isn't connected to an affirmation of any kind at all. The secret is the gradual and intentional negation of our present relationship and identification with this world and ourselves as we see ourselves, imagine ourselves as being. So it's really, as Christ said, you lose your life to find it, you die to be born. It's a process of gradually recognizing how insufficient this world is in terms of being able to bring the peace that you imagine, the prosperity, even the profitability. Everything's conditional. And at some point you recognize, God, I'm as successful as the world allows me to be, and I can get back in and struggle and fight and prepare and produce and do all that again. But at a certain point, it's a diminishing return, because no matter what you do, what you reach for, by the nature of it being imagined, you can't reach for anything you don't imagine.
Mhm.
So, by the nature of it being imagined, it belongs to an order of consciousness that's already divided. There's what I want and the me that needs it, or the me that believes it needs it to be whole. Immortality is the gradual realization that you are already whole. You cannot be any more wholly a being than you are, but that the only way to access that kind of awareness and relationship with the world around you and within you is to see how futile it is. As it says in Ecclesiastes, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. Whoever struggles in the field of opposites struggles for nothing. They're no different than the beasts. And we don't understand a lot of this. I'm constantly struggling to find ways to bring into the mind a way in which it can nourish itself with understanding so it can resonate, as you described. But a lot of this requires quite a bit of preparation to be able to grasp. So, and over to you.
Do you think that imagination is always like the product of a divided mind?
Um, well, first of all, yes, imagination always belongs to a divided mind. There's me and what I'm imagining. That's
Yes.
that's separation. Imagination isn't always negative, but where we have become fallen is that imagination is the seed of our negativity, because I imagine who I am dependent on what you feel about me. And if you don't
Mhm.
respond the way I see you responding, then my imagination compares what you're doing to how I think you should see me. And the next thing I know, I don't like you anymore, or I'm trying to change you or control you to win your approval. So the whole idea of winning approval, being profitable according to whatever it is that you have been conditioned to believe makes you profitable. I mean, Carol, when you really think about it, you know, I'm talking about myself, but especially up until probably into my 40s. I'm 75 now. Uh, You, I thought all of these ideas about what had to happen so I can be happy, whole, and content. Thought they were my ideas. They were never my ideas,
Uh-huh.
ever. I was born and raised, as all of us are, in a certain kind of environment, certain set of cultural norms, a set of financial expectations, a host of habits and traditions, and all of those, my parents, just as their parents, were molded by this society. And so here I accept as real that which never made my mother and father happy. God bless them. I loved them dearly, but they were as dysfunctional as a clock that fell on the ground and shattered. They couldn't keep time. They were always back in time, trying to make the life in the present moment represent what they were told life should be like. So all of that is grist for the mill and has to be seen as such. But it takes preparation. You can't just go, I love Christ, I love Buddha, I'm a little light bulb in a dark room. All that is just sheer imagination. Get rid of the need to imagine yourself as anything, and you have entered into another order, an immortal order of being that is no longer divided the way this mind divides everything up into who I am and what I want and need to be holy, immortal.
Okay, I get that. So when we're imagining ourselves to be something different than we are, then that's that house divided against itself.
Yes,
I'm thinking about go ahead.
no, no. I mean, see, it's just so natural to us, Carol. I, I was I was raised to believe that, and especially in my background, raised in the all of the celebrity kids and stuff like that, I was raised to believe that who you are depends upon how many people look at you and their attitude towards you. Now, you can be a plumber or an electrician or pick up garbage, and you still have that mindset, because that mind, regardless at the physical level, never stops trying to elevate itself into what it imagines will make it more meaningful a human being.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
can't be a more meaningful human being than you are right this moment. It's impossible. So imagination creates illusion. Illusion is identification. Identification is hell, to use simple words.
Okay. Okay. Because I'm thinking about imagination also, like the songs that you were talking about, the
Yep.
Temptations or whoever. What before you create anything, it is imagined. There's something that you
Well,
imagine.
you
So
know
it's
what?
not
I don't know. I don't know if that's true,
okay.
because you brought up music. Should I tell you?
Yeah.
And I,
Yeah.
I mean, I,
Yeah.
I did pretty good. I was an award. I really was. I wrote music for motion pictures, television. I hung out with Neil Diamond. I mean, I was a composer of some note, so to speak. You know how I used to write? Because I had no musical skills at all. I mean, none. I taught
Okay.
myself piano. I taught myself piano. I would sit and I would noodle. Now, this is part of my obsessive compulsive personality, I suppose. But I'd sit and noodle until I'd hear a two or three chords. I'd hear a passage, and it would elicit from me an emotion.
Okay.
And I loved the feeling of the relationship between whatever those notes were producing in me, so much so that I'd give all my attention to that, and then I would let that music tell me what it meant. And then inevitably something would come up in the rest of my system and find words that described what those emotions that were being moved were doing. And then I would take those words and then I would expand on the words in order to create something that fulfilled the original impulse of the music. So there was no imagination needed, although certainly you can see, you're working on a certain scheme or you want to write a hook, meaning the part that makes people crazy that they can't forget when they're lying. Like I was a curse on the world, these hooks. Papa was a rolling stone. You know,
You can't get that out of your head.
last night, my mind was going, we jamming, we jamming, we jamming, we jamming, we jamming, you know. So, point being this, that's all a flowering. Where is imagination needed in the innate flowering of something? Now, you can
Yeah.
put the maraschino cherry on, you can polish it with knowledge of how certain things work better than other things. You bring that in, but it's all done as an aspect of love instead of trying to imagine something that when you get it, you will have love. And that's a big difference in my mind.
Right. Right. I get that. Yeah. I mean, imagination, it can't be like love or my immortal self or my peace is somewhere out there that I can imagine.
That's
That's
it.
here
That's
right now. It sounded like when you were creating music though, that you were, whether you were aware of it or not, you were living in this immortal soul. I mean, you were aware, you
I
were creating from that space.
I would say that's kind of accurate, actually, looking back,
Yeah.
because the immortality, to use words, this is I don't want to take the submarine down into the Marianas Trench right here. Um, there's an awareness of my environment, which by and large we're asleep to because I'm too involved in resolving certain sensations that my body's experiencing, and I don't want any disturbance in my life. Here's the great pitfall of humanity, the belief that we're meant to live without disturbances.
Hmm. Hmm.
Creation is the big disturbance in
Right.
the story. And you are not just a creator, but a creation. So you are constantly being reborn. But we're not aware of our ceaseless rebirth because we're too busy trying to give birth to something that will allow us to escape the disturbance at the root of this constant process of being created. So everything's so
Hmm.
turned around. That's why, anyway. So, yes, I think that's the process. The observer and the observed, not separate anymore because the observer wants something from the observed, but rather the relationship between the two is a union, and in the union is the fulfillment of the soul. So that the fulfillment of the soul is its relationship to the immortal nature, the divine that gave birth to the soul. I'm the vine, you're the branches. When they're separate, there's nothing that can happen. There's no circulation.
Mm.
To enter into the circulation is the gift that we're given as human beings to know ourselves that way. But that's to change the metaphor, that's a long, bumpy road for most of us. I know it. I know it's been for me, and my feet still hurt.
A long and winding road, to
So
quote
long
another
and
musician. Another hook
yeah,
kind of line. You said that the purpose of, I think, these kind of Christ incarnations is to remind us of our lost heritage, that we are children of a celestial being, and within us dwells the seed of the immortal self.
yeah.
And so that really kind of caused me. I've been doing a lot of reflection on uh, the walk of Jesus, and the talk of Jesus, and how he really said, "Follow me, follow me, follow me," over and over again. And I think that people saw that as walking around with him versus
And
actually doing what he did.
actually still see that in the
Uh-huh.
Aramaic. The words "follow me" is more or less like this in the ancient language: "Be like me,"
Yeah.
not
Right.
"follow me."
Right.
You know, Christ came from the Jewish heritage. Thou shalt have no graven images. God does not have a name. Don't give God a name, because whatever name you give him is going to be made in your own image, because that's the only way you can give something a name, is through your knowledge. Knowledge is the past. So we essentially wind up worshiping, without knowing it, a God made in our own image, that we wonder, how could God be like this? Why don't I wonder why I'm so selfish and self-centered and egotistic? So I am punished by myself without knowing it, because I keep imagining that this good God should only give me the things that I want, that are good for me, and never bring me a disturbance that I can't be delivered from by imagining a way out of it. You see,
Right.
that's hell.
Yeah, and the life of Jesus was highly disturbed.
Yeah, you think? There's an old country and western song. As a, everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die.
Oh, I hadn't heard that. That's a good one.
And that's it.
Okay.
I'm, everything's great as long as I can keep being who I think I am, getting the things I think I need, so that I can be the contented person that loves Jesus. Jesus said, "Sell all and follow me." Now, get rid of everything that is between you and this light that I am, and let this light that I am show you you don't need the things you've imagined, and they're the source of your pain, not your contentment.
Mhm.
Forgive me
Mhm.
if I'm paraphrasing too loosely, but that's really the bottom line. And you can't do that. You can no more. I can no more bring myself the light than I can capture a sunbeam in a cup. It's an illusion that the light and I are separate.
Mhm.
There's no moment in which, as a person awakens, I'm granting that, there's no moment in which I'm not being illuminated. And what's being illuminated is not this lovey dovey, perfect everything. What's being illuminated is the will of earth, is the matter itself. And it's being illuminated so that in that relationship, that which doesn't know anything about itself at all. It's shocking how little this human being knows about the soul, its own consciousness, and how conditioned it is, and how corrupted it's become over the millennia of compounding pattern after pattern after pattern. Well, that by the grace of God, I see where it is that this weakness has called itself strength. Then you get the full scripture: "In my weakness is your strength made perfect."
Well, my mind is like going in I'm on multiple highways based on what you just
Beautiful.
said.
Let's pick one of the roads.
I'm gonna pick one of them.
Yeah.
One of them is the immortal self that we're talking about. that when I'm still on the Jesus topic,
Yes.
that when he was referring to the kingdom of heaven, that's what he was referring to.
Oh, the kingdom of heaven, like the immortal self, is neither a position or a possession. There's nothing individual in enlightenment. Immortality is not mine any more than it's yours. Immortality is a relationship with that which is unending, had no beginning and no end. Creation, rebirth, has no beginning and no end. Few people go this far to learn about it, but in the beginning, the opening of Genesis, in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
this is the beginning. It's never not the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
When Christ said, I am the light of the world, the actual translation of roughly is that I am that which illumines the minds of men and women that are in the darkness. I am that which shows them what they do not know so they can stop loving what harms them and begin to love the light that reveals to them their captivity. And as that's clear, then this soul that is a captive of this unconsciousness presently then begins to realize I'm going to have to pick up my cross. I'm going to have to do what I don't want to do. I don't want to do it. I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I could go on for like 3 hours alone on the various stages of self-realization and ultimately, in quotes, awakening. You get closer to knowing that you're nearer to the divine, the more you wish you didn't know about yourself that brought you there. Because when this nature, like Pharaoh promising the Jews, sure, go ahead, you can leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? See, the land of the Egypt was the land of darkness in the old language. This mind, this divided mind, this fallen mind. So,
Yes.
so it's always saying, sure, sure, here's what to do. And Carol, this mind doesn't know what to do. It's always trying to get itself out of what it did the last time. And it can't see the pattern. Awareness of the pattern is the beginning of the end of it, because according to the law of thermodynamics, nothing can change a pattern unless something enters into the pattern from outside of it. The light enters into the darkness is transformed.
I think that when we're using light and darkness motifs, I think a lot of people are seeing that outside of themselves. They're
Yeah.
seeing
Oh boy.
they're seeing the dark forces out there, and that the battle of good and evil out there, and it's all out there, and not really seeing that it's really in here.
Yeah. We struggle not with flesh and blood, but with powers and principalities. And those word powers and principalities refer to an interior, unseen government that runs the whole thing. People
Yeah,
think there's a left and a right and all the rest of that. That's nonsense. It's nonsense. Do I have
I agree with
preferences?
you.
Yeah, I was raised in a certain culture. Myself, I tend to be a little more of a conservative human being. But when whatever it is that I hold true makes me hate someone else or sets me against another human being, believing that I know what love and goodness is. If you want proof that you don't know what love and goodness is, count the number of enemies you have who are set against your ideals. You don't know what love and goodness is. He maketh the sun to shine on good and evil alike, said Christ. What's he talking about? Another nature, another order of being that allows for the opposites, but is never identified with either one to the extent where it punishes myself or those who I would judge.
Well, that's a great soundbite right there. I mean, that's that's it, because that's what this world, when you look at it, it's like, wow, it's crazy
Yeah.
that we have these two sets of people that I think are kind of in maybe the same movie theater, but watching different movies and holding so much onto the beliefs that that movie is telling them, and seeing the other side as completely insane and very, very dangerous. I mean, that's how I
Well,
would
no,
describe the
no,
world that we're in.
this is accurate. But the minute that you even begin to see something like that, the fact that you see that no opposite can resolve or save its own opposite. No opposite can change its opposite. We are in an endless struggle to change the opposite of what we think is right, true, and good. Resistance doesn't change anything, it
Hmm.
crystallizes what is being acted against and crystallizes the ideology that says, I know better than you do. And so I become more against things than for something. That's where we are.
Right, right. I mean, for myself, I just want to be able to have us all love each other again, but hold on whatever opinion you want. I mean, fine,
What if,
but
but what, Carol, what if we never loved each other again the way the mind thinks it?
okay, that's a good point.
Yeah, because
So like I'm imagining something
yeah, let's go
that's
back to
different
the
than it
better
is.
time.
Okay.
Was there a better time? There were times when people cared more about art than what they could be recognized for from it. There was a time when people thought excellence was critical, quality, not quantity. But all of the various revolutions through the evolution of our culture and the world itself have brought about a slow but definitive corruption in this idea that what matters most of all is that which most successfully defines me according to what I think to be a successful human being is. I'll never forget, I was 18 years old and I was already pretty far along the road inwardly. And my father was very concerned for me. My mom and dad were divorced when I was about 14. He's a very successful man in New York, Time Magazine Man of the Decade. And he
Mm.
comes out here and takes me to dinner. And he's sitting there. And I love my dad. I did. He says, son, says, you're 18 years old. You should be driving a Cadillac by now, he said to me.
Oh.
That was the measure of, he said, you should be making at least 50K, 100K. This was what back in night was 60, around 68, 69. A lot of money then. And I remember like, I said, Dad, and I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. I didn't know any better. But these words came out of my mouth to him. I said, Dad, I'm not interested. I said, I want to be a god.
What did he say?
His jaw dropped. He ordered another vodka gimlet, and then tried to and then I got around to explaining to him. I didn't. I just I just wanted more. That the world, if it was capable of answering the ache in myself, it would have done it. It didn't do it for him. I even said that to him. But of course, you can't hear.
Mhm.
Christ, if you have eyes to see, ears to hear, no one can hear when you're identified. How can I listen if all I'm waiting to hear is what confirms me? It's impossible.
Mhm,
Part of
mhm,
our awakening is starting to recognize that all I'm listening for is a confirmation of what I'm identified with. And
mhm,
if you don't
mhm,
confirm that, then you're my enemy. Seeing
mhm.
that that's where the enemy comes from, not the perception that you and a person are against me, I begin to die to that idea. And I can actually, just like I did right here, I can start to listen. I can be here. The moment's never not talking. Everything that's moving through you is a kind of music. But sometimes the music is beautiful, has a good hook. We're jamming, we're jamming, we're jamming. And other times you're a mess, you're a mess, you're a mess. That life is hell, life is hell, life is hell. It's all one movement. There are places in a river that are beautiful, you drink from. Other places in a river you wouldn't touch to save your life. But it's a movement. We get lost in places, in positions. Life is trying to tell us there is no place or position for what is immortal. What is immortal is the whole of the movement, all of its aspects, without exception.
That's beautiful. Um, I grew up in a family that only had used cars. We we never, ever had a new car.
Yeah, maybe I'd have been better off. Who knows?
I think our image was the used car family.
I swear to God, my mother, God rest her soul, she was a very earthly woman. She loved gardening and stuff like that, in spite of our uh, social position. And it was to no end of my eternal embarrassment that she never stopped driving her 1958 Oldsmobile station wagon. So,
Yes.
so conditioned was I that I would ask her to drop me off 2 blocks away from school. Can you imagine
Okay.
the torment in that poor child?
Yeah. Yeah.
And never knowing. And of course, my mother couldn't explain. All she knew was that was her value. She didn't want this, that, or the other. Uh, but the child, poor children, poor world.
Yeah.
That's why it seems endless and impossible, but it's not. Our work is so critical to bringing a new kind of light into this unconscious nature so that at least it can begin to use what punishes it instead of agree to be punished by adding more to itself. It's a very different relationship. It's an uphill, seems to be uphill. Mr. Howard used to tell me, he said, I wasn't able to make the truth popular. He said, but you're going to do it, he told me. And I thought, yeah, that's right. Boy, does he have the last laugh on me. It's like, it's like selling ice to Eskimos.
you, you never know, you never
No,
know.
that's the but see, look, did Johnny Appleseed care where his seeds fell?
No, exactly. Right.
He loved
They
he
took the
loves
seeds and walked go
yes,
forward,
that's
kept the
exactly right.
flow.
That's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Right. Right. So the being present, the suffering that we experience is when we resist what is. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and
So
not
I have a question about that, but go ahead.
no, no, you go, 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 go.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to the Jesus thing. So,
That's fine.
I'm on it because there is a traditional belief that Jesus suffered for us and died suffering to absolve us of our sins. And so we have two things going on there. We have the suffering and we have the vicarious redemption. Now, I want to put the vicarious redemption to the side for a moment and focus on the suffering, because it would be my contention that the Christ, if that is a being, a person who has realized this immortal self, this immortal soul, and has experienced the oneness with God, that every moment of the pain that he endured would not be resisted, but that would just be allowed.
Every moment of the suffering, the All Father does their suffering. As above, so below. Look at creation. We don't think to ourselves, even when the sunlight um, begins to wane and the leaf begins to lose its chlorophyll and begins to turn into a leaf that's dying, we don't think to ourselves that there's anything involved in that. We don't even know anything about it. But there's a process where something that was can be no longer, so that that which was, it resists the fact that it is being changed. Transformation involves resistance. There's no escaping that. Transformation involves resistance. What is it that's going to be transformed? That which was. That which was.
Uh-huh.
Go, oh, this is grand. Let me give myself up so I can become something else. It clings tooth and nail. It's built into the fabric of matter. I don't want to go too far. I don't want to go down in the trench. But matter is light congealed. Everything you look at is the sun. Not in
Right.
imagination, everything.
Yeah.
So light is acting on light. The sunlight acts on the sunlight, but the sunlight it acts on is in material form. It does that so that that which is part an innate relationship will gradually yield itself, the will of heaven upon the will of earth, that they may be united. This circulation is a representation of an endless reconciliation between what is celestial, timeless, energetic, invisible, and what is in time, made of matter, and substantial stuff. But it's all the same stuff. So, yes, there is an innate resistance. There is suffering in resistance. But when you understand the nature of that suffering, you are now in agreement with it, which means it isn't painful in the old way. It becomes conscious suffering.
Okay. All right. That's where I wanted to go
That's the
now.
big
What conscious
key.
suffering is.
That's the big key. Now I agree. Please, can you, not this cup today, okay? I mean, I can't drink from this today. I did it yesterday, and tomorrow I might be okay with it. But right now, my husband's this, my wife did that. I looked at the news, my finances, they just got a call from the doctor. He said, I have news, but I can't tell you over the phone. I mean, you run through the whole gamut and you go, no more. But when you begin to understand by the grace of God that everything that you are being given to see is in fact a gift to free you from what clings, then you can begin to see, you know what, how beautiful it is to be able to realize I'm okay. I'm all right. Let this cup be in my hands. I'll drink from it because I have seen enough and understood enough through past experience that when I do that, what entered into that moment is not the same order of being that exits it. I'm made new when I agree to give myself up. I keep a self that will never be new in place when I fight with anything that comes to reveal the content of that consciousness seemingly under threat. Christ, I don't need to say bless his soul, but it's kind of appropriate. Bless that living light that was sentient enough that knew. That's another whole story, Carol. Uh, we see things like this time, that time, this time, that time.
Yeah.
Another order of being in which, and that's part of conscious suffering, that realizes I'm just fulfilling what was ordained. And what was ordained is that one has to die so that one can be born. It isn't I who is dying, it isn't I who is being born, but it is God revealing through his mercy the endless immortal relationship that we are intended as forms of light to be transformed by the active light to bring us into this reconciliation where there's no more any difference between what is acting and what is being acted on. I'm going to say it again. There's no more difference between what is acting and what is being acted on. You get to that point in your life and your pain takes on a completely different meaning. All that resistance now creates energy instead of stealing it from you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right. So the active transformation, which is constant, we're constantly dying and being reborn to something new,
At every
constantly
level.
at every level.
Yeah.
Right.
You started
Right.
dying when you were born. So did I.
Right. Right.
Just that it
Right.
takes a long time to see it.
But now we can.
Well, no, that's why they have Botox and hair.
That's right.
I mean, better not go there. Better not go down that road.
You got medicine for that.
Yeah. My mother
Uh,
tried to achieve immortality through ceaseless injections of other material, face peeling. God help her. How painful it is. How how painful it is to fear death. It's the only fear, all said and done. And it's not your fear. It's the fear of a nature that was never born. You know Christ, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. The nature that was never born, this personality, it was a creation. It's now in first place. It's not about to move itself out. It has to come to a certain realization in which invoked within it this light. The light dwelleth in the darkness, and the darkness comprehendeth it not. As that light is given the latitude to reveal what it does, then by a certain order of spirit, one loses interest in fear, which is the same as losing the fear of death. Because what is
mhm.
other than the end of myself as I've imagined, the end of what I own, the end of where I'm going, the end of who I've been? All of that is the fear of death. In one respect, the fear of emptiness. But you boil that down and then you realize it in a greater scale of things. There's no yin without yang. There's no emptiness without fullness. There's no light without darkness. None of these things exist separate from each other. Immortality is the recognition and the entrance into that celestial circulation. So now you know yourself as part of that movement, as opposed to trying to take something from it.
I've had several people tell me that they're not afraid of death, but they just don't want to have a painful death.
Yeah, that's Woody Allen. I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens.
I just want to check out.
Yeah, that's it. And my mother, that's how she always said, and God bless her, that's literally what happened. She checked out. But I would argue somewhat strenuously, what have been the most telling moments in my life, I don't know anybody else's, was when I finally realized that the pain I tried to avoid at all costs was the ultimate revelation of something, a lesson that I didn't know I needed. And when I stopped fighting tooth and nail, suddenly I was freed from the nature that believed somehow or other it was made less for this or had something taken from it because of that. Most important moments in my life have always been the most painful ones. Not that the moments where, and I'd be lying if I said it was otherwise, I've had untold mystic, call it what you will, revelations, but they're not the most important. They're the confirmation of the pain I agreed to go through, not the other
Mhm.
way around.
Yeah, and so that's kind of what I was trying to get at with the Jesus suffering part, that at some level, everything that happened to him, the betrayal and the denial and the actual physical
It's
torture and
it's
everything.
still happening, Carol.
Yes.
This Jesus wasn't 2,000 years ago.
Okay. Okay. Okay, you're right. Okay. All right.
See, the mind puts things in time.
That's true. That's true.
That nature is still giving itself up. We wouldn't be alive if that nature wasn't continually giving itself up. We're just not a participant in that yet because we can't give anything up. I mean, out of my dead hands, you'll take whatever it is that I think I require. And so I cling and clutch and hold on. Gradually, you see, well, what could be a greater waste of time than that? Only then do you start to see, well, I should sell. I do need to give up this identity. I can't give it up by myself, but I can see how useless it is. I, I, I mean, honest to God, it is useless to be Guy. Guy is useless. He's
Okay.
he's an absolutely useless creature. And if it hadn't been for certain redemption that had taken place, the world's better off without him in it. Nobody can see that. Oh, he was. You go, my God bless my brother. He died about 6 months ago, suddenly. And they have these, what do they call them? Celebrations of life. People
Yeah.
don't come to celebrate the person that died. They come to celebrate the sensation they have when they speak all the beautiful things about him that 6 months ago they were saying under their breath, Jesus, this guy's got to go. He's the worst. What a braggart. He's so annoying, you know? And we don't see the dichotomy. And it's there. No, let us
I
be,
can see that.
yes,
I can see that.
let's be
Yeah.
what we're created to be. So
Yeah.
if I want to go celebrate my brother, I'm not going to go believe that all the things I'm experiencing are about him. I'm experiencing what I experience about myself. Let me
Right.
not
I
lie
see
to
that.
myself. Is it nice? I
Right.
don't know. For me, that's not the way I go. I just never been like that ever.
Yeah.
I don't believe that. I mean, when something terrible happens, I love my wife till the end of time. We're together over 40 years. Do I want her to suffer ever? No, absolutely I don't. She suffers terribly over the idea that I'm going to die before she does. She's made me promise that I won't, that she'll go first. And I don't have that kind of control, but I'll tell her, I promise. Why? I don't want her to suffer. And yet I know beyond the shadow of a doubt that she will grow from every bit of suffering that takes place, every little bit. So why would I?
Right.
I'm sorry that that happened. Why would I say sorry when I understand that there's a joy hidden in the sorrow if a person can use it properly? And the only way you learn to use that kind of sorrow, loss, properly is when at last you stop consoling yourself. You stop believing that others' consolation means they care about you, and you're consoled by Christ Himself. You're consoled by intelligence itself. And the consolation isn't something outside of you. The consolation is the realization you've never been apart from that one great, beautiful life.
Yeah, and the reason I keep bringing this up, though, is because I think story, as I think you do too, story
I love
is
stories.
really helps us it really helps us
Absolutely.
understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's not so much a historical person, but that whole story is our story.
Our story.
And yeah, and looking at that story, it shows us, or it reminds us, I should say, it calls with forth within us
It evokes.
how to also walk the path
Absolutely.
where we suffer and where bad things are happening to us and we're quote crucified and all of that stuff. That story, I think, is a great illustration that we can claim as our own.
Stories, parables, which Christ spoke in. Buddha always told stories, different ways in which Zen masters have forever recounted relationships between seemingly different people when it's really just different levels of consciousness. All that's vital and critical. But again, to the point is that the real conversion of the soul isn't the discovery that something is outside of it waiting to convert it, but that it is
Yes,
always a participant in that conversion, always a participant in that crucifixion, always a participant in every last thing. Then the conversion is the discovery that you were never apart from the Christ, from the divine, from the Almighty, ever. That's the
right.
conversion.
That's the, yeah. Okay. All right. So I don't know. We've got maybe 10 minutes or so. So many more things I can cover. Nothing in the universe can take from you your right to be spiritually free. I love that statement.
It's true.
I
But
yes, it is.
but how do I find that out? Just last night, I talk 3 times a week. Just last night, I told a story. You have other questions. Maybe let me just agree with what you said, and then maybe you want to ask some other questions.
That's okay. Go ahead and tell the story. I think
I tell stories.
go ahead.
Here's the head devil down in hell, and he's having a fit. And the less devil comes. What's going on? He said, I was up there as we're all given to do, putting pictures in people's minds, the bad things to come, so that then they see this picture and they think it belongs to them, and then they can live in fear of the very thing their own mind showed them. And I've had complete control. But yesterday I was up there and I was showing somebody this terrible thing that was going to happen. And out of the clear blue sky, she said something that shocked me to my bones. That's why I'm having this fit. What did she say that shocked you to your bones? She looked at me and she said, prove it. Prove it. What you're showing me isn't here. It isn't now. Prove it's here and now. And it can't, because fear doesn't live without division. Fear doesn't live without negative imagination. Fear doesn't exist without resistance to the very thing the mind imagined of itself. So when she said, prove it, she threw him back on his heels. You and I can say to any given moment where we're afraid, prove it. I'm going to wait and see. I'm not going to see what you tell me is there and then rush to save myself. In fact, prove it means I'm not going to save myself. You like the story of Christ. How about the temptation in the desert? What did he say every time? No, and not by the word, not by
Redolin, yeah.
not by this, not by that, but by the word of God. The word of God is not God saying a word. The word of God is the logos, the entire intelligent system, what is divine, and it's light. That's what I live by. You say that to the devil, and what can he do? He's got nothing. All he can do is tempt you in some other way, meaning create something new to do, some new plan that you can escape and console yourself again with something else that proves to be the platform of your next pain.
Well, I like that story. Really glad you told that story. There's so many movies out there. You came from the movie world and Hollywood, whatnot, but there's so many movies out there that are all about the apocalypse. How horrible world is in the year 21 something or other, or whatever it is.
It's a world that worships fear.
Yes.
By saying it can't stand what it fears. It's a world that worships fear by professing how much it hates the thing it says it fears. Resistance creates identification. Fear is not an individual lie, it is a lying nature. So that our God, and people, maybe not a good place to end on this, but people, what do you mean? I say, you worship the God of fear. I do not. Well, what do you turn to when something happens that you don't like? You turn to something that has told you what's happened, then you listen to it tell you how to escape it, and then you give your choices over to that nature and then get there again and again and again. Who's your God? When you have the real God in your life, events don't repeat themselves. How's that?
I think that's a great way to end.
I like you, Carol.
I think that's a great way to end. I really like that. We barely covered your book. I do want to say that The Secret of Your Immortal Soul is it's a book that's full of very short essays, and it's one of those things where you don't have to read it front to back. I love books like that. You could just open it up and just get a lesson, and just know that lesson is for you. And if
Yes.
it doesn't resonate, open up to another one.
Yeah, it can be a lot like an I Ching, Secret of Your
Yeah.
Immortal Self. Every little story brings up something in you that has a relationship to the content. Your consciousness is changed to the extent you accept it, and then you can open another one. That's the beauty of any
Yes.
true book, isn't it? The book doesn't change. Your relationship to it changes as you grow. Principles
Yes.
are true or
Yes.
not.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I just like books that. Well, I read so many books for this podcast, but this one's so much fun because you've got all the titles in the beginning, and you could just look at that, or you could just open it, or whatever. But and there are many of them have stories, and we've talked about how stories are it's such important ways for us
Oh,
to
yeah.
learn,
Yeah.
and some of them just crack me up.
Well, you're a rare bird in many ways, okay? If all the world had Carol's love of truth, we would have a different world. But that's what that's what we're working for,
Yeah.
individually, collectively.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll have your website, everything, the ways to hear you 3 times a week, and
For
all the
free,
ways that you're accessible
free.
for
Nothing
free.
to join, online, streaming across the world. If you want to know about a special event coming up in September, also free to attend to online, go to guyfinley.org/action. guyfinley.org/action, and you can find out about the event and how you can participate in it. Again, for nothing. We don't ask anything. We appreciate donations, but we don't ask.
I think that is just so lovely, and it's so rare. So thank you for that.
It's how I was educated. My teacher, he charged. There was a $3 donation requested at the door, starting back in 1976, and today it's a $3 donation requested at the door.
Well, not even inflation corrected.
No, no, I thought about it, but you know what? If people can afford it, great. If they can't, I'm not about to say don't come and listen.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. This has been just a delightful conversation.
To use technology and terminology from the past, it was a blast, Carol.
It was it was a blast. Now we need to come up with a hook, a song for that.
Oh, I've got one. I'll see you again. And you know you're always welcome to visit here. We've got 15 acres, old growth sugar pine, lots of beautiful foundation property, beautiful place to meet. I extend it again and again. If you ever come, let Barbara know there's a place for you, okay?
I sure will.
Okay.
I sure will. Thank you, Guy. Thank you for blessing us today.
Yeah, Carol. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.